Hey everybody, this is the Freakopolis Times, our podcast, mostly about stuff related to our comics and game shop, the Freakopolis Geekery. We're Ian, Tyler, and Troy, and we run the shop and host this podcast. Join us and some occasional guests as we talk comics, games, pop culture, and just about anything else that pops up. Remember, while some of our topics can get a little geeky, they change up often, so hang in there and maybe the next one will be more your style. By the way, this podcast is video enhanced on YouTube and Spotify. Check it out if you're feeling left out on the visuals. You never know what might show up. Now, let's do the show. All right, so first of all, last week we discussed the James Webb Telescope and what we thought we might see from it. And then we revisited during the week. We looked at various stuff from James Webb. And so now we've seen actual images. And now we know that it's actually parked about 1 million miles out.
Mm-hmm. We underestimated that.
Yeah.
It's wilder than we could have imagined.
Yeah, it's way out there. It's way out there. Actually, that means, if you think about it, that means that if radio transmissions from it travel at light speed, then it takes 3 or 4 seconds
for it to transmit some data.
Yeah, for data to get from it to us.
That's a pretty significant distance as far as we meager humans are concerned.
Yeah,
right.
Way, like 3 times farther out than the moon.
Really?
I think so.
Yeah. The moon's at about 260,000 miles.
And it's not actually orbiting the Earth, apparently.
No, it's orbiting the sun.
Right.
Yeah, it's in an orbit similar to the Earth, but around the sun, I guess. Of course, we'll have to fact check ourselves on that one too, but...
if that's the case, it seems like a whole achievement just to get it in place, you know?
Yeah, it's a pretty big deal.
I mean, I've played Kerbal Space Program and that.
Yeah, that sounds wildly difficult to do.
Yeah, exactly. That was unachievable for me, even in a video game, so...
It's hard even just to get in the air.
Right, exactly, let alone make the whole thing.
But in general, we've seen some photographs. They released 5 of them. The first day that we were all waiting for it, that we were recording the last podcast, it was more of a sort of public display.
Yeah.
Because they had the president and the vice president there. But they really, they showed us a standard resolution image kind of coming through over broadcast. It wasn't a very impressive thing. But then the following day, when they released 5 images, those were impressive.
Mm-hmm. What their presentation did manage to do was pay a little of the much worthwhile glory to the people who put the effort into making this thing in the first place, It handed them the reins a little bit and said, what was your part in this and why is it so fantastic? And that's pretty cool. I get, though on YouTube it was a rather choppy presentation, but I could still feel the effort.
This is true, although frankly I think it would have been cooler had they first shown us the results.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, we're all taking it for granted that, they're going to blow our minds.
Mm-hmm.
And so tell us about all the things you did involved in it. It's like, but we haven't even seen it yet.
True enough.
So blow our minds and then tell me who it was that was behind all that and what they did. 'Cause that would make a lot more sense. Because they could have failed. We hadn't seen anything yet. So kind of a weird place to take there. But the photographs, what did you guys think of what we've seen?
Well, that first one I think was deceptively cool because it just reveals how much more expansive the universe has become than what we imagined it to be 100 years ago.
The first one being basically a similar photograph to what the Hubble had blown us away with.
Yes.
Where you could see galaxies and like a bunch of galaxies. This one, much finer detail, many more dim objects, many more dimmed out galaxies, many more...
Yeah, it just brought into focus how dense with stars and galaxies, even the most bare regions of our night sky appear to be. And in consideration with that, there's just infinite possibility out there in the universe.
It had such a broader range of visuals than the prior telescopes had been able to produce as well. Like, just looking at all the extra stuff.
Yeah, and the color quality and everything, because in the past they've been colorizing those images to help us understand what we're seeing, and now they're really just letting the equipment interpret the color.
Yeah, which is definitely pretty damn cool. Then there's the data, essentially, that they got of a exoplanet, a very large and puffy exoplanet, about twice the size of Jupiter, but half the density, which is a huge planet that is very gassy, but they found that within that gas is liquid water, or gaseous water, but one way or another, H2O is found there in a decent enough abundancy that it was able to be found on their spectrometer.
Spectrometer.
Yeah, but spectrography? What's the...
Right, spectrography.
Spectrography, yeah. Through their spectrography, they managed to find H2O in that gas.
Awesome. Well, I think they're going to find that all over the place, though. That's one of the things and when you see that one image of all the galaxies and stuff, you realize you're just looking at like an infinite expanse.
Yeah.
And then when you find out that it is this tiniest fraction of the night sky, like the tiniest possible fraction of the night sky that it's penetrating to, and that any other fraction of the night sky, similar size, would probably be populated similarly, which, what you're seeing in the photograph already feels infinite. And then you realize, there's an infinite amount of this infinite that we're looking at. So it's crazy. It certainly makes the Earth feel small. Our entire solar system feels small. Suddenly, the whole Milky Way galaxy, you realize, is the equivalent of any one of those little swirls you see in that image. And so it's small.
It is. It's just a tiny little slice of the universe. And that photo is as well, and it produced an incredible density of objects to observe. And finally, I think the one that I found to be the coolest was the 5 intertwined galaxies. Those ones that are all caught in a orbit amidst each other, or are clashing with one another, or more so, passing through one another, essentially, and exchanging stars. But when I saw that, I could just imagine, with that density of stars, there's so much chance of rolling the dice that there might be a chance that some intelligent life amidst there, right? And if there were to be, because that's, there could very well be 500 billion stars, or more. Who's to say it's not like 1 trillion stars there? We haven't exactly counted them all,
Right.
That we know that galaxies can be huge, and all these ones, for 5 of them to be caught in a dance, essentially. Imagine what that night sky is like to the lobster people living on Xerxes 5.
I mean, one of the things that's interesting there, though, is the relationship to space and time.
Yeah.
And you do kind of wonder when you see that photograph, because things can be so far away and we're not really judging the distance in those 2D photographs, like, are they all taking place at the same time? Do those galaxies see that time the same way? Or are we seeing a snapshot that looks into the depth of time and sees, for instance, another galaxy that has moved on? It's not even there anymore because that's from 5 billion years ago.
That might be the case, but I think things are so slow on a galactic level or universal
On
level,
a universal scale, yeah.
Right. That even if we took a picture of that spot 5 billion years from now, it probably wouldn't be too changed.
That would be impressive. One way or another, all those images definitely.
Well, I guess 5 billion, yeah, that's a different scale.
Yeah.
5 million years, no, they'd be
Yeah.
where they are now.
Right.
You know.
But billions could mean stars that burn out.
Yes.
And, all of that. So
A lot of scientists presume, though, that the universe is still relatively young. So many stars being born, like we saw in those nebula and those crazy gas fields that they took photos of.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose if there's stars being born and enough material swirling around and condensing that new ones are popping up, we might have a while to go yet here.
Yeah.
Well, if there's any astrophysicists listening to this podcast, get in touch. We'd love to have you in an interview, and we'll talk through this. Famous or not famous, just if you're an astrophysicist, get in touch.
A few people did comment on our last episode mentioning a hideout that we had not even considered in our top sort of superhero hideouts that we had talked about.
Oh, everyone's a critic.
Right. Everybody's got their ideas and I thought of a number of them while doing the post-production for the show.
Oh, sure.
But, that's not what we talked about at that moment in time.
One of them that I thought was really cool was the helicarrier.
Yeah.
That shield helicarrier.
Deserved a mention.
Yeah.
I heard it a few times that the Fortress of Solitude.
Which I referenced to a friend of the stores, a friend of the shop, I reference as just being an ice cave.
They had a rebuttal in that they said it was an ice cave filled with Superman's coolest stuff,
Yeah.
But at the same time,
it's the equivalent to the cave that, Luke gets trapped in with the Yeti. That's pretty much what I think of.
Well, he was right about it, and I was just trying to get his goat really
Yeah,
bad.
yeah.
But, yeah, the Fortress of Solitude, it kind of can't be denied. One of the cool things about it is I don't think anybody else can really get in there.
Right.
So that is one of the cool. It ensures the solitude of the man from Krypton.
It's true, yeah.
Superman's got his own place that he can go and be left all alone, and
But it's not necessarily secret. Superman says, I'm going to the Fortress of Solitude.
Right.
And he'll fly off in the direction of the Fortress of Solitude. Batman's never gotta go back to the Batcave.
Yeah.
And then just starts walking towards the Batcave.
The first rule of the Batcave is don't mention the Batcave.
Yeah, At least not to those who shouldn't know about it.
Right.
But yeah, I suppose that's just the ballsiness you get.
I'm going to the Fortress of Solitude. I've got moping to do.
It is a bit of a moping kind of name. The Castle of Weasleyness. I must return to my
Den of Devastation.
The den of... there isn't one of those. Now, on the other hand, the helicarrier, it kind of feels similar to the Baxter Building or Avengers Tower.
Yeah.
In that it's sort of a modern construction and it can be pretty evident. But the helicarrier is cool because it can move around, and I think it can even cloak itself now.
It can.
Yeah, so it does. At least it's not like a sitting duck.
No, it's
like those
just
skyscraper ones are.
Yeah. It is a whole city in the sky, which is pretty awesome for sure. An entire weaponized arsenal waiting up there, and usually a superhero or two. So that definitely makes it pretty cool. But yeah, it's another one of those public ones where they're essentially saying, "Come get us!"
Right, but it's S.H.I.E.L.D.'s more like military. It's got the minute anybody goes up there, there's attack helicopters launched off of it, and you don't even get to get close to it. It's
generally not.
It's more like if you try to get close to an aircraft carrier.
Yeah, that's the idea.
You don't get to do that.
Helicarrier versus the Batcave in an actual battle. Depends, I guess, if Batman has the schematics to the helicarrier.
Right, how long is he prepared?
Yeah.
Well, basically, you'd have Alfred in the Batcave and some second in command in charge of the helicarrier.
Right.
You can't have the the key people.
We're knocking them out of the equation.
Okay, so it's
Yeah.
really just no main characters involved.
Right.
Just the bases.
Alfred is awesome, but he's just one
Yeah.
speck on.
He's got fire pulse. They got this. Unless the helicarrier also has fire pulse.
Well, they certainly could if they want.
Man. The fire poles do give the Batcave a distinct advantage.
Helicarrier's probably got $8 million fire poles because they're military. So.
Yes.
They've got the ones where you slide down them in your uniform.
Yeah.
It's on the bottom.
All the menus and the command of the helicarrier slide down on them.
Their beds just fold up like when an alarm sounds, so even the sleeping ones just slide down the fire pole, boom, at their stations.
Were any other headquarters mentioned by anybody? I mean, Fortress of Solitude came up a number of times.
It did.
Harley Quinn's mall that she lived in the animated series.
Yeah, Harley Quinn's mall. If you were ever a mall goer, you could see that a mall would make an awesome headquarters.
It could.
Yep. So that one, Harley Quinn animated series coming out at the end of this month again for season 3.
Yeah, season 3.
I think July 28th it releases or something. So that's going to be cool.
Yeah.
And we'll get to revisit. I bet they'll be back in that mall. Maybe. So an interesting development in the world of virtual tabletops within the last couple of weeks. Virtual tabletops, of course, being the digital version of game tables for playing primarily role-playing games. And that would include things like Roll20, Fantasy Grounds, Foundry, all of those guys. And, we've been involved in virtual tabletops for a really long time, for years and years, basically since they existed. And we've tried a number of them. We currently host some games on Roll20. We've done gaming on Fantasy Grounds before. We've done some stuff with Foundry. And even before that, systems like MapTool and KlugeWorks and a number of other ones on the way. But right now we're using Roll20, a little bit of Fantasy Grounds, a little bit of Foundry. And so one of the things that happened this past couple of weeks is there's this joined forces, and I always question what joined forces means when two companies get together. It usually means somebody bought the other one.
Yeah.
But I haven't done all the research to know exactly what goes on here. But Roll20 and One Bookshelf, One Bookshelf is the web host that manages Drive-Through RPG and a number of different RPG and fiction sites where you can buy third-party and independently produced content for role-playing games. Yeah, Roll20 and One Bookshelf, Drive-Through RPG, have joined forces. And apparently on the beneficial side, what that's going to mean is that if you have a library of stuff on Drive-Through RPG, that stuff is going to become available. That could be maps, tokens, adventures, whatever it is. That stuff could become available directly into your Roll20 asset library interface without using your Roll20 allocated space from your account. So beneficial there. I mean, I know I use both services, and I always, part of the routine was, okay, go to Drive-Through RPG, find some tokens, find some maps, find an adventure, purchase them, download them, switch to Roll20, upload them, tag them, give them names so that I can find them again, try to store them in the library, which Roll20 routinely messes up. But anyhow, the idea of being able to just access that content directly from within Roll20's interface is pretty interesting to me. But it is a bit of a shakeup of the industry. I mean, a lot of Fantasy Grounds assets, third-party assets, particularly independently produced content, that's where you would buy it, is through the Drive-Through RPG. And they have already announced in their FAQ, Roll20 and Drive-Through RPG have announced that They've had discussions with SmiteWorks, the creators of Fantasy Grounds, and that SmiteWorks is going to continue to recommend their customers buy their third-party products through DriveThruRPG. I guess it would be a big task for them to try to switch to anything else at this point. So it's no surprise. But I guess I'm wondering, what you guys think of that. If it affects anything that you're doing, or
Yeah, I mean, you kind of undersell your experience with these digital tabletops, given that you have a doctorate amount of hours put into any given one of them.
that's probably true. Yeah. Okay.
You've checked them out thoroughly, so no doubt. Yeah, this is a big kind of news in that kind of realm, especially given that Roll20 is probably 90% of the industry still, given its convenience of use. They're a titan as far as tabletop RPGs go on the digital space. And for them to start making acquisitions like this kind of speaks to a consolidation of the market in some ways.
Well, exactly. It does make you wonder if it's going to end up reducing choice. But in general, initially at least, it sort of feels like a positive. DriveThruRPG and One Bookshelf, for one thing, they used to have a upstart virtual tabletop of their own called Astral, I believe, Astral or Astral Table. That's being completely closed down, shut down, and I think apparently probably people that bought into that plan are going to find that they suddenly have accounts with Roll20. And they've got Plus or Pro accounts or whatever at Roll20. This is one of the reasons why it is interesting. I mean, granted, maybe that's just a concession made by One Bookshelf. It could also be that Roll20 is the one that purchased One Bookshelf and basically said, you're shutting that down. That's part of the deal. But either way, that's going away. It may make it easier to manage your content. It may make it easier to get interesting indie stuff into your Roll20 games. I don't know if it's going to help you out with any other system, though.
Yeah, Roll20 is really nice for its ease of use. And although this sort of joining of forces isn't going to affect me just yet or in any of my games, but if it means I can buy some new assets pretty easily just through Roll20, I won't say no to that.
Right, or buy them wherever it is that they want you to buy them, but just have them easily show up in Roll20.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Without all of the steps of downloading and uploading and all of that, which it creates this files that you have to manage. And
if they could assure that they were going to be stored and organized well as well. I've seen and heard more than enough horror stories of people's asset libraries becoming utterly jumbled into nonsense. Like, oh, this zombie is labeled Pinecone for some reason.
I know, yeah. Mine got destroyed in one of their supposed upgrades. But yeah, it wrecked up my library and I had gigs of stuff up there. So hopefully maybe it gets left alone. I mean, DriveThruRPG had their own management system for downloading, checking for updates, all of that. I guess we'll see. It'll be interesting. We're scheduled to talk in the future about all of these virtual tabletops, and we'll talk more in detail about them. But we did want to talk a little bit about, this change in the industry, how it affects other things. Even Foundry, a lot of the stuff for Foundry would be purchased through One Bookshelf sites. So again, another separate virtual tabletop in some way is going to be affected by this purchase.
I was pondering an age-old question in the shower this morning, which is
okay. Hit me.
This is a one everyone knows. What is the best character building system? At first, I meant it sort of narrower in scope to just standard array or point buy or roll for stats.
Yeah, as far as attributes are concerned.
Yeah. But it could become a bit more broad if you'd like to more. What RPG do you like building characters in the best?
Right. So who's got the best character building system
Yeah.
and why?
And what do you prefer?
A lot of people argue for rolling the dice. 46 drop the lowest in the case of D&D. That's an interesting way to go about it. I don't know if one man can handle all that power of the straight 18 stat block.
When we first played D&D, I think it was the very first edition. You rolled 3d6 in order, and then you played the character that you produced. Right, so 3d6 for each stat, 6 stats. Write them down in order, and then make a character from that result. The downside of that is, while you could get a reasonable character that you could play, you couldn't have any kind of plan to have a character that you wanted to play. It was strictly, what did you get? So it was like you were being born.
Yeah, and there were a lot of stat limitations. Like, you literally cannot be a wizard unless you have an intelligence of this much.
Yep, so if you wanted to play a wizard and you didn't happen to roll that, then no, really, you didn't even go into it at the time. You didn't even go into it with a hope for a specific type of character.
No, you just went through the character creation
process.
Yeah, and through that, you generated a character.
Found out what you got, yeah.
Which is interesting.
It is.
It could be fun.
It was such a relax to the whole thing when they let you roll 4d6 and then place them where you wanted to place them amongst the 6 stats.
Now I can choose who I want to be.
Yeah.
Won't end up with a 4 intelligence this time.
But since then, there's been things like what's known as the standard array in D&D. But I guess regardless, you always have that. Generally, there's a process that involves some dice rolling, right? No, not with the standard array.
No. Sure you can if you want to do starting gold or anything like that, But with like 5e, there's really no need to roll any dice when you make a character anymore. I find the standard array to be pretty agreeable because when you play with public groups like we do, generally you want to go for a fair and balanced experience where no one has a distinct advantage or power set over anyone else. And when you roll the dice, it's not impossible that someone will be straight up more powerful than everyone else, which there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. It just makes it more difficult to tell stories together in that circumstance. Depends on what you're looking for. There's merit to both. In fact, there's merit to randomly generated characters too, just like they did back in the old days. I totally get that. But with the stories I tell, I like the party to be on equal footing.
Yeah, sometimes I'll bump a number up. Give them a standard array +1.
Yeah, sure.
So outside of D&D, though, we play a bunch of Savage Worlds.
Yep.
That uses a different sort of system where you assign a
die
type to your 5 stats.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of points. It's basically a point buy system.
Right. Where you have a certain amount of points that you can spend, and that helps you determine what die type you can afford for any given stat slot.
Mm-hmm. Point buy is also fun.
It's a good system.
Yeah.
I'll throw in, I guess, back to Champions again. Champions lets you're building superheroes there, so you need a little bit more flexibility. Champions has probably more like 20 stats, and you distribute points among those stats, and it's done, again, with points. So like you might be building 250-point characters, which allows you to distribute 250 points using their rule systems across. You can buy it to certain levels for 1 point, and then after a certain while, you got to pay 2 points per point, that sort of thing. So it's all mathematical, and it really doesn't involve any chance. There's no die rolls or anything like that.
Yeah.
Right.
It seems like most things have gone toward a point buy system.
Yeah, that's understandable. It's pretty fun to be able to distribute those and come up with a refined character. It does lead to, kind of a meta establishment of the best way to distribute your points, if that's the way you end up playing it.
Right.
But there's nothing saying that you can't do that with standard array either. So if people are going to play meta, then they will. You can't stop it. Dice do stop that, unless they get lucky,
Yeah.
How about hit points? Does it work similarly for hit points now, or?
Hit points are definitely a bit more forgiving than they used to be in the past.
Oh, yeah.
At least the way that I do it. You roll your hit die for your character type, so a barbarian has a d12.
Yeah.
You get that
You get at least half.
half plus 1, then
Half
plus
plus one.
constitution. So
Right.
they get at least 7 plus their constitution, but if they roll above a 7 on that d12, then that's what they get instead.
Right.
Which leaves it, I think that's an excellent system, because it means that tank classes and the hardier classes will always get a pretty good amount of HP on a level up, whereas a wizard has a good chance at an awesome level up, but they also don't necessarily get screwed either,
Is that how you operate your games?
That's
Tom?
pretty much how every game I'm playing in at the moment operates it.
Yeah.
Is that usually you can roll, see if you get better than half plus 1. If you don't,
That's what you
can-
take.
yeah.
And, man, the disappointment of getting 1 HP on a level up back in, 3rd edition and stuff was
would be
pretty
devastating.
crushing. Yeah. Especially if you had, a +1 con. It's like, oh, leveled up 2 HP!
I had a wizard, because we didn't really know how it worked. In original D&D, I had a wizard that had 1 hit point. Because you only rolled on a d4 and you had no constitution bonus. And what you rolled, you got. So,
If you had a-
d4s roll 1s like crazy. So.
Oh, yeah.
If you had a negative con modifier while you were generating a character, you rolled a 1 on that d4, were you just never born?
Yes.
Yeah. It kills him instantly.
Got sick as a kid. Didn't make it to adventuring age.
How do you, Tyler? How do you feel about the Savage World system? You're playing Savage Worlds every week. How do you feel about their system in comparison to D&D?
I mean, it's definitely different. I enjoy their character creation quite a bit because there's a large amount of edges and powers that you can only take on that character creation few level ups, or points you have. So that sort of locks in your character to be a certain
Archetype.
Yeah.
Yeah, the feats and hindrances and stuff, or the edges and hindrances, and feats in D&D, that can be some of the funnest ways to invest your level ups. They're often character defining and can be really a lot of fun to throw on the character sheet.
Yeah. My half-orc ranger, Borlock, just got the tough feat.
Classic.
Level 12 or 13 or whatever. I feel like that cemented in his whole character right there.
Yep.
So a couple of creators in the comics world right now that are really big are a couple of guys named Charles Soule and Ryan Brown. And actually, we've talked to Ryan Brown before. We've interviewed him. Freakopolis has over video. He's a really cool artist. Does most of his stuff is published by Image Comics. Creator-owned stuff. He's a Chicago-based artist. I believe Charles Soule is probably Chicago-based as well. I'm not sure. But they have a title out called 8 Billion Genies.
Yeah.
And I believe it's a mini-series. I've been reading it. And 8 Billion Genies is of the concept that essentially there's a genie appears one for each person on the planet, and everybody on the planet gets a single wish. And the genie essentially will follow you around until you make your wish, and then they take off after granting your wish. And the story really just kind of takes a look at various people and how they spend their wish, how it affects the world. There's one guy who owns a bar, and he pretty much immediately uses his wish to say, whatever the heck happens with this wish thing doesn't affect this bar or anything inside of it. And,
Good choice.
And so basically, he's created this isolated space where they can watch the world do whatever it does with all of these crazy available wishes. Now, it is a interesting concept, to be sure, but one of the things that makes it really even more interesting is, you know how companies that produce media, movies, sort of bingeable streaming series and all that, they're always looking at the comics industry for what should we produce? What can we produce? Where's a story that's going to tell something new? Comics has always been that incubator of ideas, that ability to find out whether or not the public is interested in a type of idea. It's a place where the creators can get very close to their audience, where they can release stuff with a limited amount of difficulty between getting their idea from themselves and in front of people. And it's kind of always been that way. So, yeah, all the companies are looking at it. So the point being, 8 Billion Genies gets a couple of issues in, and a crazy bidding war goes into place to try to option this concept and series. Well, you can imagine when you get into a big bidding war like that, who the players probably were. I don't know who all the players are, but I do know who won. And Amazon is now the proud owner of the option to produce probably a bingeable series of the content of 8 Billion Genies from Charles Soule and Ryan Brown. So, good for them.
Yeah, I suppose so, right? I think that took until issue 2?
Yeah, something like that, yeah. And interestingly, Image Comics, who said, you know, paper shortages being what they are, printing presses availability being what it is right now, they would not be doing any second, third printing, anything but first printings. They're only doing first printings. So, of course, everybody instantly assumes, holy cow, 8 Billion Genies first printings are going to be incredibly rare and incredibly desirable.
Mm-hmm.
True. Absolutely true. Still true. But Image Comics, for some reason, has found it within themselves to reprint 8 Billion Genies already. They're sending the stuff back for second prints, which they said they wouldn't be doing, but they are because the demand has gone way, way up.
Yeah, bending their own rules for the sake of this one. That's no surprise, though, for sure. It's definitely a wild success. Good for them, because they're two prolific creators who have tried a lot of really interesting stories and found varying success, I believe.
Oh, yeah. They're like some of the hardest working guys in comics.
Yeah, but it's no surprise that they finally struck gold, especially with this one. Probably not for the first time, but definitely in a major league way this time. And, comics serve as a perfect springboard for potential new series or movies or whatever they would like to do, given that they're essentially a storyboard and the writing and the dialogue all in one easy-to-find space, you know? It's not like any of these movies or productions are made without the classic storyboard techniques of pinning up what the scenes look like in order to get it down in everyone's mind. But here, in comic books, panel to panel, obviously they accomplish the same thing. So it's really cool to see that region is being plucked away from some giant hands, essentially.
Yeah, I think they can just take the comics and hand them off to the show producers, the director.
Make this into a show.
Yeah, the screenplay people, and say, here it is. Here's this. We need to make this as a show.
Definitely a super cool art style in that book, for sure. I haven't actually read any of the issues we have in stock, but it's got a striking look to it.
Well, Ryan Brown has a huge range of what he's capable of doing.
Yeah.
He can do things from very, very hand-drawn and casual-looking sketches, all the way up through this really intense, highly designed pieces. So lots of stuff there. 8 Billion Genies, I think, lands sort of somewhere in the middle. It's really cool looking. His idea for what genies look like is very interesting.
Super colorful, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's almost like they're the shape of bloopy little whipped cream guys, but that are instead filled with like starscapes or something.
Right.
So it's an interesting angle that he has on what a genie is. They don't look like what we've considered as genies in the past.
Well, it is a cool concept. I'll be excited to see what Amazon decides to do with it.
Yeah.
How they'll pull that off.
It sounds not quite as easy to produce as a lot of other indie comics coming out right now. So
No.
It does leave you wondering why they press so hard to get their hands on this one.
Yeah, they're leaving themselves. I mean, maybe they're just trying to prevent anybody else from getting it. I mean, that's part of what optioning does,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't mean they have to make something from it.
What
it means-
nobody else will.
Right. It means that Charles Soule and Ryan Brown bank a bunch of cash,
Yep.
which is really nice for those guys. And I'm sure that, typically they'd have in a deal that if anything comes from it, they get to be involved further and they get to make more money. But either way, it sounds like they did just fine just in this stage of things.
It sounds like it for sure, yeah. And I believe that 8 Billion Genies is only supposed to be a 6 or maybe, I believe 6 issue event, maybe 8. I can't recall completely off the top of my head, but it's supposed to be a rather short run. So get your hands on it now if you can, I guess.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I mean, I don't even know if Amazon has seen all the way through to the end.
No, yeah.
It might not exist yet.
Yeah.
So they might just be buying off on it from the first few issues, which, hey, great. Good for those creators to find something that made it worthwhile, and Amazon dives in and throws a bunch of money at them, and they're all set now. And that about does it for this one. If you liked hanging with us, please subscribe through your favorite podcast directory. Join our Discord and check out our shop, the Freakopolis Geekery. See you next time.